Welcome to It's Your Date with Destiny with Apostle Vivian and Pastor Jemma Duncan of Divine Destiny Worship Center in Diego Martin. For the next 30 minutes, join us as we take you on a journey of maximizing your potential and realizing your goals through Jesus Christ.
Why is it when you need a miracle, it doesn't happen, but when you least expect it, it happens?
You are married, you have challenges in your relationship, but your spouse is unwilling to accede to any counseling. Is divorce an option?
How does a parent handle a promiscuous child?
What are considered the do's and don'ts of a born-again couple who is not yet married?
There are always more questions than answers. So here is Apostle Jemma.
Grace and peace to you. Welcome to Ask Pastor Jemma. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me this afternoon. In the event that you're a first-time viewer, my name is Jemma Duncan. I'm married to Apostle Vivian Duncan, and together we pastor Divine Destiny Worship Center. Our headquarters is in Diego Martin on the Diego Martin Main Road, opposite Sardonynx Drive in Trinidad. We do have branches in Sangre Grande in Shogunas, a branch in Faizabad, there's a branch in Rio Claro, one in Tobago, and one in Antigua. However, very important note, the headquarters in Diego Martin and the Rio Claro branch will be fully online. So Sundays at 9 a.m., which are regular Sunday service, will be online for Diego Martin branch and Rio Claro, simply because for Diego Martin, we're doing some repairs to the building, and we are not able to house in-house services. However, in all of the other branches, we have in-house services, so please feel free to join any one of the branches. If you want information, just call 633-3780 to find out a branch close to you if you want to do that. The administrative office will be open still, despite the fact that we're not having services. The offices are running Monday to Thursday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. and the business center Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. This afternoon, I'm pleased to give you the full session, episode 5 of the Marriage Confessional with Dion and Leah Duncan. I may have given you an excerpt last week, and I'm sure some of you waited with bated breath for the rest. Some of you may have gone online and gotten the rest, but I know some people are not techno-savvy, and you're saying, but why doesn't she give us the full thing? Well, today, I'm going to give you the full episode, and talking about how to deal with trauma, they sharing some of their own experiences. And the idea is that trauma should cause you to come closer together than push you or pull you apart.
Welcome to another episode of the Marriage Confessional with the Duncans. I am Leah.
And I'm Dion.
Can you believe we are already at episode 5? Time is just going by so quickly.
Yes.
Thanks, of course, again to you for your comments and your support. We greatly appreciate it. Well, in this home, over the last few days, we have been in celebratory mode, just celebration of our kids, our 2 sons, Darian Emmanuel and Daniel Elijah. Both have March birthdays, so we've been celebrating them. They're born 1 week apart. And in particular, we've been celebrating our firstborn, Darian. He actually turned 10, and wow. I have literally just been a weepy mess, actually. Wow. I can't believe that we have a 10-year-old son, and I have just been reflecting on just over the years, all that we've been through, our experiences with him, and the fact that now he is officially in double digits at 10 years old.
Imagine that.
In this episode, we will be addressing the topic of expectation versus reality. How do you deal with trauma?
When we talk about expectation versus reality, we think about the vows that we said on our wedding day.
You know, everybody is usually, the bride and groom is usually in, they are usually in a euphoric stage. And they don't really understand what it is that they are committing to. You know, the vows that say in sickness and in health,
For better
or for worse,
Yeah.
for richer or for poor.
Yeah.
You know, those are words that set an expectation of what life can really be. And for many individuals, you know, they go through their wedding in euphoria, they start their married life in euphoria, and then the reality sets in.
Yeah.
The fantasy goes away and reality sets in that, hey, life has really begun. And one of those areas where reality typically sets in is trauma. You know, you think about somebody who, I'll give an example, you know, you've heard of on the news sometimes where there's a couple just got married and then just after they got married, somebody got a serious diagnosis or somebody died in a horrific car accident. That's trauma. That's reality setting in. And, you know, it's very important for us to, as married couples, as people walking towards marriage, to make sure that there's that balance in preparation when we talk about the reality of life.
Yeah.
And, you know, speaking of trauma, today we're going to talk about how, you know, we overcame, you know, trauma. We've had traumatic experiences after traumatic experiences
Several.
that has shaped not just our lives as a couple, but our lives as individuals.
Yeah.
But today we're going to talk about how we've dealt with, you know, traumatic experiences. And, you know, in our case, bless the Lord, how it helped brought us together.
How it brought us together,
Yes.
how it made us stronger
Yes.
as a couple. And thankfully we could share those, or at least some of those experiences with others today with
Yes.
the hope that it inspires someone out there, it blesses someone out there. And, you know, as Dion said, in speaking about trauma, I think, and, you know, and thinking about our firstborn, as I mentioned earlier, who is now 10 years old, you know, we go all the way back to when we got pregnant. We were married for about 2.5 years. Then we got pregnant, very excited. By the time we had our firstborn, we were married for just over 3 years. So we had a little bit of a honeymoon period with each other, which was amazing. And it's highly recommended, by the way.
Yes.
Take that time to, you know, travel and bond and connect physically and just all the things that you need to do as a newly wed couple. And, you know, it was time to give birth. We had the whole plan. And, you know, as women, especially first-time moms, you have your perfect birthing plan. You have just in your mind how you want everything to go, how it's supposed to look, you know. But many times it doesn't go that way, right? Reality. It does not happen that way, expectation versus reality. And in our case, it didn't really go the way that we envisioned it going. And I ended up having a C-section, and we had our firstborn. He was over 10 pounds, so he was a big boy. And, you know, everything was great. We were all, mom and baby were doing pretty well. And then a first traumatic event happened. Just, you know, while I was recovering, suddenly, not really sure exactly what happened, but suddenly my life was hanging in the balance. We didn't really know what was happening. Just gave birth. All of a sudden, we're in this state of trauma. We don't know what is happening with me. And that was just one thing. Mere hours later, our newborn baby, suddenly it appeared that his life was hanging in the balance. We were not sure what was happening there as well. In just a very short period of time, right? We had this perfect expectation of what was going to happen. We were going to be out of the hospital in a couple of days with our newborn and all of the things. But then reality hit. It didn't go that way for us. And, you know, I think a lot of times when you're going through it, you're so numb. You don't really know how to process everything that is happening, but you're just acting. Yes. You're just moving forward and acting.
Like a machine.
Exactly.
The adrenaline is moving.
That's what you have to do. You have to get up and move. And, you know, I just remember I reflected on that the other day. Our newborn baby, I just had a C-section, and our newborn is being driven away in an ambulance to another hospital. And I just had a C-section as a new mom, right? And it was just so traumatic to deal with. And one question I have for you is, you know, as a husband, as my husband, going from one moment not knowing what's happening with your wife, not knowing if she would be okay, to then suddenly not knowing what is happening with your firstborn, your newborn baby. How did you feel at that time? I'm not sure. Did I ever ask you that question? I'm not sure. But how did you feel going from, you know, one thing to another in such a short space of time?
Well, definitely, this was not going according to plan. Right. That was in my head. You know, as a husband, my job is to protect. So, you know, anyone who knows us personally knows that I will do everything to make Leah's life better. Take out the trash. I will go get gas before I go away for a trip, so that I know that she doesn't have to go to the gas station. Like, I am that type of person. Yes. You know, if I'm going away, I'll ask the neighbor to take the trash out so that she doesn't have to. That type of stuff I try to do to make her life easier. So when I cannot provide that level of security, you know, we're in the room, she's in recovery, the baby's doing fine, and then all of a sudden, you know, things are happening and the doctors are ushering me out of the room. I'm helpless. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's one thing, and you have to process that, and you know, I'm just trying to make sure that you're okay, and eventually you were. Yes, but then just when the adrenaline came down, in comes a team of doctors and nurses saying, you know, blah blah blah, this is happening, and we are loading up an ambulance to take your firstborn son,
newborn,
to some
hours old,
yes, to some other hospital. And there I had a choice. What do I do? My job is to protect my wife. My job as a first-time father is to protect my firstborn son, which people would pay money for to get a firstborn son. Yes. And I had to choose. And obviously, he's defenseless. So we decided that, you know, I will leave you here, and I'm going to drive cross town because it wasn't close by. I would drive cross town. And I followed that ambulance like an emergency driver right behind that ambulance. And it's only the security at the other hospital didn't let me drive in behind the ambulance. Because they went in through the, you know, authorized section, and I had to go park, etc. And, you know, as Leah mentioned, during the events that unfolded that night, that fateful night, I wasn't really thinking about, you know, what's happening. I'm just such in a numb adrenaline rush, almost machine reaction type situation, trying to make sure that he's okay, trying to get as much information as I can, and then trying to relay that information back to my wife, who's recovering from a major surgery, you know, in giving birth. So it was really difficult. And I think, you know, in retrospect, it took a very long time. Like, it took a very long time for me to get over that whole experience, because even when, you know, we eventually came home and all of those things, my job was still to protect and to try to create some sense of normalness in the house. Normalcy. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, because even, you know, even for me, as you said, you left to go with him. And here am I, just had a C-section, could barely walk. I'm like, doctor, you are discharging me because I am going to be with my newborn. I don't really care what you say. So here am I, could barely walk, you know, got discharged that day to go to be with my newborn. And I have so many, I have a flood of memories, of memories. But as you said, you know, in coming home, there was just so much to unpack there. But as new parents, it was like, okay, you're just in parenting mode. You're just functioning and trying to make sure that your newborn's okay, that I'm okay. And I think we hardly had time to really decompress,
right,
and to really address our emotions, and how we felt right away. But it took some time, and and I remember when there was one point we were in our first home, and we were you were standing right by the door, I remember. And we had a conversation. You came to me and we were talking. You were expressing your emotions, how you were feeling. I remember in that conversation, that was a conversation that we kind of like bared our souls, and we talked about how we felt and just handling the situation, and just how we were just, I think, in treating each other with the situation and the baby and the whole dynamic and all of that. And I remember clearly, like after we had that conversation, I began to say, I began to just, I felt the urge to just forgive. And I started to say, well, I forgive you, my hubby, I forgive myself, I forgive the doctors and nurses, and sometimes I don't necessarily know if it was like an intentional thing, but perhaps subconsciously, there are all these different feelings that you feel. There are things that you wish you could have done, or maybe I could have done this, or maybe you could have done that to prevent this from happening. So many things that you think about, right, that you probably literally have no control over. And I just began to say, I forgive everybody. I forgive, that had anything to do with anything. I forgive God. I forgive every person. I think after that conversation, I felt like, there was a greater sense of freedom. I think, of course, the situation and the trauma, the memories would always be there. We'd always remember those things. We would never forget. And, as with any traumatic experience, this is just our scenario that we went through, one of the experiences that we had. But trauma could take so many different forms, as Dion talked about, whether it's an illness, whether it's some kind of accident, whether
unexpected loss of life.
It could be unexpected, right? An unexpected loss of life. It could be a couple trying to have a child and having miscarriages. It could be so many different things and challenges that you can face that can result in trauma. It could be a financial shock to the relationship. Someone suddenly loses a job, the breadwinner, and suddenly fortunes change suddenly, and things that change financially. It could be so many different things that can cause trauma in a relationship, but and oftentimes it's very difficult when you're going through it to really assess the feelings.
Yes.
But it is really important to, I guess, at some point, to be able to decompress and to communicate, especially with your spouse, to talk about how you feel. How do you feel? How do I feel? How do we address it? Do you need counseling? Do you need professional counseling?
Yes.
Right? Do you need an expert to talk to express your feelings and to help you to recover and cope, right, in your relationship? Because many times, especially with death and all of those types of things, a lot of unresolved feelings can take root, right, and cause problems. So there's just a lot to around that you have to, I think, be aware of as a couple, in being aware, you're being aware of yourself, your emotions, and also the fact that your partner has emotions as well. How do they feel? And being able to come to a place where you can openly express yourselves and talk about these feelings honestly, and figuring out the best path forward, because at the end of the day, you want to move forward.
Yes.
You want to move forward. You don't want to stay stuck in that place, in that traumatic place. You want to learn from it, and you want to move forward from there.
Yes, and also, what we're saying here is that, so I'll start by saying this. For me, that conversation that we had started with a conversation with God, because, you had a lot of questions. being people of faith, it's like, God, how could this happen to us?
Yeah.
What did I do? Did I do something wrong? Did we do something wrong? And how it works when the initial shock wears over, you start playing the movie back in your mind. Did I do something different? And, looking back at it, I was a functional depressant. Like, I was depressed. And I was functionally depressed because, yes, I was showing face, and yes, I was going on with life. But then I always had these things playing back in my head, and God had to talk to me and tell me, listen, this had nothing to do with you. There's nothing that you could have done different. This is just part of your story. And what it did for me is it allowed me to relieve myself and take myself off the hook. And by having that conversation with Leah, she took me off the hook, so we were off each other's hook.
Yes.
And I think that was such a big turning point for us. And I say that to say that, undealt trauma really affects not just marital relationships, but relationships altogether, how you interrelate with people. I think that's why it's very important that it's not just we are talking about in the context of our marriage, but, this trauma affected the way how we related with individuals outside as well. Absolutely. We are not blind to that fact. And, not dealing with trauma is like taking stink trash and putting it in the closet and closing the door and expecting, it all to go away because it's out of sight. But every time you walk by that closet or every time you open that closet door, you will take the waft of that stink. And that's what unresolved trauma is. And what we're encouraging us to do today is to deal with that trauma. Now, it's difficult. It's not easy. And sometimes you're going to need professional help. You're going to need someone,
outside resources.
to help you. And, in the beginning, it might be very, 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 very difficult. And it might trigger off all sorts of emotions and bring you right back to that place. But you have to walk through it and process it in order to deal with it effectively. Now, with trauma, it never goes away from your memory. Now, think about it. You could have some major injury, some big accident, a big slash or cut or a major surgery that took place. Now, you may have been healed and you don't have the pain anymore, but you have the big scar on your hand. And effectively processed trauma is when I could look at the scar and I could touch it and I don't feel any pain. It's there. I could see it, I could feel it, it's real, but I don't feel the pain anymore because it's healed correctly. And this is what we are trying to picture, to paint this picture for you, is that when you deal with the trauma, in our case, thank God, it allowed us to look back and be like, we overcome this. And what it did was it helped bring us closer as a unit, right? So that when the next traumatic experience came, and they came in, they came in waves. When the next traumatic experience came, we already said, hey, we overcame one, we could overcome the other one, we could overcome the other one. And that's life. That's life.
That's life. You have the mountains and you have the valleys.
Yes.
But you have to make up your mind that you are going to overcome it together. You stick together with God, and you will overcome it. But as we know, as believers, as Christians, we know that trouble will come. We know that challenges will come. We know that issues will come. We know that things will come to test our faith. But our resolve, our perseverance, or our belief in God, those things continue to keep us going.
Yes. And that's what James 1 says, count it all joy when you find yourself in diverse situations. It comes to work your patience, work your faith. And there may be somebody out there, as we start to wrap up, who you're listening, and you may be dealing with, you may have related to something that we've said. Something resonates with you based on what we've said. And maybe you don't have the courage because, there are many people, it's not just emotional trauma. There are many people, for example, physical trauma. You have a pain in your body, but you're so afraid to go to the doctor because you're thinking worst case scenario. There are some people, your refrigerator isn't cooling the food as much as it can. and the food is lukewarm, but you're so afraid to call the repairman because you're expecting some big price for the repair price. Or same thing with the car. There are many people, your car is literally making a noise and it's telling you, fix me, fix me, fix me. But you're so afraid that when you go to the fix-it shop, that it's going to cost, thousands of dollars to fix, money that you don't have. And that's how people deal with trauma. There's a big fear on the inside that if I go there, it's going to be more than I expected, and I don't want to touch that room. I don't want to play with it. I'll just dance around the situation.
I'm not going to address it.
Exactly, and that might work for some circumstances. So, for example, workplace trauma. If something happened at a particular workplace, you could quit your job and you could move on and try to move on from that event. But if it's within the context and confines of marriage, what are you going to do? Just walk away from a marriage? Yeah. Some people do that. Yeah. And they don't understand that, life is life. You will always everybody is going to deal with some sort of experience which you could consider trauma. And if not dealt with, could exacerbate itself into something huge, right? And something it becomes untenable. So my encouragement to you, my encouraging word, and we're encouraging you today that you can overcome what you're facing. You're in the midst of a relationship, you're dealing with some stress, you're dealing with some trauma, maybe it's with your family, maybe it's with your health, maybe it's with your finances, maybe your house burned down and your housing situation is in flux. Maybe you dealt with a traumatic experience with your child or with some accident. And we are here today to encourage you. Yeah. We are here today to tell you that with God, you could deal with your trauma. You could overcome every circumstance that plagues you. To that person who's dealing with that movie playing in their mind over and over of that accident or of that incident. And whenever you're doing well, all of a sudden you sink into that little valley, into that little trough, and your interpersonal relationships are all affected. Everyone knows that whenever you're in that mode, they walk away from you. I'm here to tell you that you can overcome it. You can overcome it with the help of God. Yes. And we declare by God's grace, by His love, by His power, that you too shall experience a breakthrough like Leah and I did. You too shall have the courage to call your spouse and say, hey, we can't go on living like this. Let's go get help. You too, the trauma might be with your child, because people forget that children have feelings and have emotions. And you could pull your child in and say, hey, let's talk. Let's go get some help. And don't be afraid of getting help. Asking for help is the first sign of actually recovery, because you know that something is wrong. At least you know that something is wrong. Many people walk around not knowing. And ignorant to the fact that something is wrong with them. So the fact that you think that you need help and that you're seeking out help means that it's the first step to get help. And we're here today as testimonies that if you face trauma head on, if you confront the trauma that's in front of you, that you too can overcome the traumas in your life, and that you could be better and you could be more equipped for the next wave. Because let me tell you something, as long as you live, you will be dealing.
And as long as you continue to journey together.
As long as you live, there will be a new level, new challenge, new circumstance that could bring a traumatic experience to your life.
Yes, certainly. Wow. We went there.
We went there.
We went there today.
Join Donald and Angel at the Body Church, inc.org. Join Dr. J. Duncan at the pkconnection.com. want you to forget what Jesus said. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except by me. God bless you real good.